Ready? The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
Donald Trump is taking the biggest gamble yet, one that could change the fate of America's $34 billion farming industry forever. With crop prices plummeting, equipment sales crashing, and small towns on the brink, one question looms. Can Trump's plan save U.S. farmers or destroy them? China is pulling away from American crops, global rivals are rising, and farmers are left struggling to survive. But there's much more to this story. Stick with me as we uncover how Trump's bold new policies are shaking the foundations of American agriculture, why it could hit your food supply, and what's coming next in this high-stakes battle. What's happening? Donald Trump, in his current presidential term, has turned his focus to revitalizing the American farming sector, a sector now valued at over $34 billion annually. For years, this industry has been a cornerstone of America's heartland, but recent global dynamics have placed immense pressure on it. In a bold and controversial move, Trump announced a series of protectionist policies aimed at shielding American farmers from foreign market disruptions. With tensions escalating between the United States and China, the president has enacted new tariffs on agricultural imports and exports, sparking what many are calling the beginning of a full-blown trade war. The rationale: to restore America's self-reliance by making foreign competitors think twice before flooding U.S. markets with cheaper goods. Trump has defended these measures as necessary for long-term growth. During a press conference, he stated, "America's farmers have been neglected for too long. We are bringing back control of our land and resources." Yet critics argue that his policies may be creating unintended consequences, with farmers now facing a complex web of trade barriers and fluctuating demand. The immediate results have been staggering. Crop prices for staples like soybeans and corn have dropped sharply due to export restrictions. Meanwhile, equipment manufacturers have reported declining sales, and rural communities that depend on agriculture are bracing for further economic hardship. As President Trump's policies continue to reshape the landscape, tensions with China have escalated, setting the stage for dramatic shifts in trade relations. The U.S.-China agricultural showdown intensifies. Under Donald Trump's leadership, the United States and China have become embroiled in a high-stakes economic confrontation that has profoundly affected the agricultural sector. For years, American farmers heavily relied on China as a top export market. Crops like soybeans and corn formed the backbone of thousands of U.S. farming operations, creating a stable, mutually beneficial trade relationship. However, that stability was shattered as tensions between the two superpowers escalated. Trump's administration enacted a series of protectionist policies, including tariffs on Chinese goods, aiming to reduce America's dependence on foreign markets and restore self-reliance. In retaliation, China imposed its own tariffs on key U.S. agricultural exports, including soybeans, pork, and corn. This tit-for-tat strategy sparked what many now refer to as an agricultural trade war, with devastating consequences for American farmers. Soybean prices dropped by more than 35% during the height of the conflict, with warehouses filling up with unsold crops. Farmers who had long depended on stable export contracts with China were suddenly left without buyers. Many were forced to sell their produce at a loss or search for alternative markets in countries like Japan and South Korea, where demand was significantly lower. The fallout was swift and severe, as rural farming communities began to experience the ripple effects of reduced revenue and economic instability. China's response to U.S. tariffs was strategic. By redirecting its agricultural imports to other suppliers, particularly in South America, it sought to minimize its reliance on American crops. Brazil and Argentina quickly seized the opportunity to expand their market share, leveraging lower production costs and vast farmlands. These countries' growing dominance placed additional pressure on U.S. farmers, who now faced both reduced access to export markets and increased competition. Meanwhile, the domestic situation deteriorated. Agricultural equipment manufacturers such as John Deere saw dramatic declines in sales as farmers postponed or canceled equipment purchases. The economic uncertainty caused by fluctuating commodity prices and trade policies left many farmers unable to invest in new technology or infrastructure. Factories that once operated at full capacity began scaling back production, leading to layoffs and temporary closures in rural areas. In response to the mounting crisis, Trump's administration attempted to offer relief through federal aid programs, injecting billions of dollars into struggling farms. However, critics argued that these measures were insufficient to address the long-term structural issues facing the industry. Many farmers expressed frustration, feeling caught in the crossfire of political decisions beyond their control. Despite these challenges, Trump remains defiant, emphasizing that his policies were part of a broader effort to reduce foreign dependence and strengthen domestic industries. Supporters of his administration argued that the temporary pain would ultimately lead to long-term gains, with more resilient supply chains and greater self-reliance. The agricultural showdown between the United States and China underscores the fragility of global trade relationships. With international markets increasingly polarized by geopolitical tensions, American farmers are left grappling with a harsh new reality. As export demand falters and competition intensifies, the future of U.S. agriculture hangs in the balance. Whether relief programs and policy shifts will be enough to stabilize the sector remains an open question. In the meantime, farmers and manufacturers alike continue to navigate the storm, searching for new strategies to adapt and survive. While geopolitical tensions continue to escalate, the domestic market is also experiencing upheaval as manufacturers and communities grapple with declining demand for agricultural equipment. Collapsing equipment demand, a blow to American industry. The ripple effects of the agricultural crisis extend beyond crops. Agricultural equipment manufacturers, including iconic U.S. brands like John Deere, have reported dramatic declines in sales. As farmers struggle with lower crop prices and fewer export opportunities, many have delayed or canceled equipment purchases, leading to a slowdown in production across the industry. Factories that once operated at full capacity are now scaling back, with some facing layoffs and temporary closures. Equipment dealers, particularly in rural areas, are also feeling the squeeze, as fewer farmers can afford to invest in new machinery. In response, Trump has called on manufacturers to adapt by focusing on domestic markets and developing new technologies aimed at increasing efficiency. The administration has also hinted at tax incentives for companies willing to keep their production in the United States. Despite these efforts, manufacturers warn that a prolonged crisis could weaken America's industrial base. For smaller equipment suppliers, the situation is especially dire. Many are calling for a comprehensive plan that includes both federal support and new strategies to stimulate domestic demand. As industries react to the growing crisis, the livelihoods of rural communities are at stake. Local economies built around farming are now facing an uncertain future. The human toll. The agricultural crisis is not just about markets and machinery. It is a deeply personal struggle for millions of Americans whose livelihoods depend on farming. Across the Midwest and the Great Plains, small towns are feeling the full force of the downturn. Schools, healthcare facilities, and local businesses that once thrived on the prosperity of farming communities are now facing budget cuts and declining revenues. For families like the Carters in Nebraska, who have farmed their land for generations, the situation has become increasingly desperate. Emily Carter, whose farm primarily grows soybeans, says, "We're at a breaking point. We've never seen prices drop this low, and with fewer buyers, we're running out of options." Farmers are being forced to make agonizing decisions, whether to sell off land, take out additional loans, or leave the industry altogether. The psychological toll has been immense, with reports of increased stress and mental health issues among farming families. Trump has made several public appearances in rural America, promising support and urging resilience. However, many farmers are skeptical, feeling that they have been caught in the crossfire of political decisions beyond their control. So how will global forces and political decisions continue to shape the trajectory of the agricultural sector under Trump's presidency? The rise of Chinese farming efficiency. Over the past decade, China has poured billions of dollars into agricultural technology, irrigation systems, and sustainability initiatives. This shift is part of a long-term strategy to reduce its reliance on foreign crop imports, particularly from the United States. By enhancing the efficiency of its domestic farms, China has positioned itself to produce staple crops like soybeans, wheat, and corn at competitive levels. For years, China was the largest buyer of American soybeans, importing tens of billions of dollars worth annually. This demand sustained thousands of U.S. farms and created a stable export market. However, as tensions escalated between the two superpowers, China began reducing its dependency on U.S. crops. By supporting its farmers through subsidies and technology investments, China achieved significant progress in agricultural self-sufficiency. The results were striking. U.S. soybean exports to China plummeted by more than 80%. Corn and wheat exports saw similar declines. Meanwhile, surplus crop crops in the United States led to a sharp decrease in prices. For American farmers, China's pivot to domestic production created an existential threat, undermining a key source of revenue. As China expanded its agricultural prowess, global trade dynamics began to shift, with ripple effects spreading across developed and developing nations. Global trade shifts shake Western manufacturers. China's focus on self-reliance did not only impact U.S. farmers, it also disrupted agricultural equipment markets worldwide. By investing in both farming efficiency and equipment manufacturing, China flooded global markets with affordable Chinese-made agricultural machinery. This posed a major challenge to Western manufacturers like John Deere and Case IH, which had long dominated the industry. For decades, American and European manufacturers supplied state-of-the-art farming equipment to countries across the globe. However, as China's manufacturing sector gained momentum, it began producing tractors, harvesters, and irrigation systems at a fraction of the cost. These lower prices made Chinese equipment attractive to farmers in developing nations who previously could not afford Western technology. The influx of inexpensive Chinese machinery destabilized markets for Western manufacturers. Sales of US-made equipment declined significantly in key regions such as Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. To remain competitive, companies like John Deere were forced to rethink their global strategies, including outsourcing production to lower-cost countries. However, this move soon triggered political backlash at home. The shift in global trade highlighted a key vulnerability for U.S. agriculture. American farmers not only lost access to critical export markets, but also faced increased competition from foreign-made machinery. This dual blow left many wondering whether they could compete in a rapidly evolving global economy. While China reshaped the global agricultural landscape, domestic policies in the United States further complicated matters for American farmers and manufacturers. Trump's protectionist policies versus free trade. Donald Trump's protectionist agenda sought to counteract the effects of globalization, but it often created unintended consequences for U.S. manufacturers. One of the most controversial aspects of his economic strategy was the use of tariffs and trade barriers. Trump repeatedly criticized American companies like John Deere for outsourcing production overseas, warning that they could face tariffs if they did not bring manufacturing jobs back to U.S. soil. This approach placed manufacturers in a difficult position. On the one hand, companies understood the importance of supporting American jobs and maintaining domestic production. On the other hand, the high costs associated with US-based manufacturing, such as wages, regulations, and logistics, made it difficult to compete with foreign producers. Tariffs intended to protect American industries instead led to increased tensions within trade agreements, including the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Farmers, too, found themselves caught in the middle of these economic policies. While Trump aimed to strengthen domestic industries, his trade wars disrupted access to key international markets. Many farmers expressed frustration, arguing that the tariffs hurt their ability to sell crops globally. Critics pointed out that protectionism often backfired, leading to higher costs for consumers and businesses. Despite these challenges, Trump maintained that his policies were necessary to rebuild America's economic foundation. Supporters of his agenda argued that temporary pain would eventually lead to long-term gains in job creation and industrial growth. As U.S. policies and global trade conflicts intensified, investors and markets reacted with growing uncertainty. Investor and market reactions. Financial markets closely monitored the impact of Trump's protectionist measures on key industries, including agriculture. The imposition of tariffs and the resulting trade wars caused significant volatility in both stock prices and commodity markets. Agricultural equipment manufacturers such as John Deere saw their stock prices fluctuate wildly as investors weighed the risks associated with international trade disputes. One of the most immediate effects was a sharp decline in commodity futures. Prices for soybeans, corn, and wheat dropped to multi-year lows as export demand dried up. Farmers, already burdened by rising operational costs, faced even tighter profit margins. The uncertainty surrounding trade agreements made it difficult for them to plan their planting seasons or secure long-term contracts. Wall Street analysts debated whether Trump's policies would ultimately benefit or harm the competitiveness of U.S. industries. Some investors viewed the tariffs as an opportunity for American companies to reclaim market share by reducing reliance on foreign supply chains. Others were more skeptical, warning that prolonged trade wars could lead to economic stagnation and reduced global investment in U.S. agriculture. In response to market instability, the Trump administration attempted to reassure both farmers and investors. Federal relief programs were expanded to provide financial assistance to struggling farms. Additionally, the administration worked to negotiate new trade deals that would open alternative markets for American crops. However, these efforts were met with mixed success. The market reactions underscored a critical issue: economic nationalism. While politically popular in some regions, came with significant risks. Without a clear strategy to mitigate the effects of global competition, U.S. industries struggled to maintain their footing in an increasingly interconnected world. As markets continued to adjust, U.S. farmers found themselves facing a harsh reality. Global competitors were not waiting for them to recover. The quiet rise of South American farming giants and global collaboration. As U.S. farmers grappled with the challenges of market volatility and trade disruptions, their counterparts in South America have steadily risen to prominence in the global agricultural sector. Countries like Brazil and Argentina have capitalized on opportunities to expand their farming industries, thanks to significant investments in infrastructure, modern farming techniques, and export strategies. These advancements have enabled them to compete directly with American farmers, especially in the production of key crops like soybeans and corn. Brazil, with its vast arable land and favorable climate for year-round farming, has emerged as a leading agricultural powerhouse. Over the past 15 years, its soybean exports have surged, surpassing the United States as the top supplier to major markets like China. This shift came as China reduced its reliance on American crops in favor of politically neutral suppliers. Argentina has followed a similar path, improving its supply chain logistics and investing in high-yield crop varieties supported by government incentives. These developments have placed U.S. farmers at a competitive disadvantage. The combination of lower labor costs, fewer regulatory restrictions, and expanded global outreach has allowed South American producers to gain ground in international markets. For many American farmers, particularly those operating small and mid-sized farms, staying competitive has become an uphill battle. In response to these global pressures, the agricultural sector has increasingly turned to international collaboration as a means of fostering sustainability and innovation. Recognizing that many of the challenges facing farmers are global in nature, partnerships between nations have become essential for addressing issues like climate adaptation and food security. One notable area of collaboration involves joint research initiatives aimed at developing resilient crop varieties. American universities and agricultural research centers have partnered with institutions in Europe, Africa, and South America to create crops that can withstand drought, pests, and disease. These collaborations facilitate the exchange of technology and expertise, empowering farmers worldwide to adapt to changing environmental conditions. Trade agreements have also been restructured to emphasize sustainable agricultural practices. Many new deals include provisions promoting reduced pesticide use, improved water management, and environmentally friendly farming techniques. By aligning global agricultural standards, these agreements create incentives for producers to adopt sustainable practices while ensuring market access. In addition to trade and research partnerships, international efforts to address food security have expanded. Programs designed to support smallholder farmers in developing countries aim to strengthen the global food supply chain while opening new markets for American agricultural products and technology. These initiatives foster mutual growth and stability by promoting equitable access to resources and knowledge. With global competition increasing, American farmers turned to technology in an effort to regain their edge, but challenges persisted. The technological divide in global farming. Technology has long been a cornerstone of American farming, but recent years have exposed a growing divide between farmers in the United States and their international competitors. While American farms continue to use advanced machinery and data-driven tools, farmers in countries like Brazil and Argentina have adopted technological innovations at a faster pace, often without the regulatory and financial hurdles faced by their U.S. counterparts. One of the most significant differences lies in access to open-source technology. Many South American farmers have embraced collaborative platforms that allow them to modify and maintain equipment at lower costs. By using open source software and customizable machinery, these farmers can quickly adapt their operations to changing market conditions. In contrast, many American farmers are locked into restrictive agreements with major manufacturers like John Deere. These agreements limit their ability to repair or upgrade equipment independently, often forcing them to pay high fees for proprietary services. Precision agriculture, which uses satellite imaging, drones, and automated systems to optimize crop management, has also become a critical factor in global competition. While U.S. farms have made strides in adopting these technologies, the financial burden of purchasing and maintaining such tools has prevented many smaller farms from fully benefiting. Meanwhile, South American farms, often supported by government subsidies, have implemented similar technologies at scale. The technological divide underscores a larger issue. Without policy reforms and greater access to affordable innovation, American farmers risk falling further behind in the global market. As technological advancements reshaped farming, losing trust further complicated the competitive landscape for U.S. agriculture. Grassroots solutions and advocacy for change. Amid the turmoil of global competition and trade disputes, American farmers began organizing grassroots movements to advocate for change. These efforts focused on both policy reforms and the promotion of sustainable farming practices. Recognizing that traditional export markets were becoming increasingly unreliable, many farmers sought to diversify their operations and reduce dependency on volatile international trade. One key area of advocacy centered on the right to repair movement, which aimed to give farmers greater control over their equipment. By lobbying for legislation that would require manufacturers to provide access to diagnostic tools and spare parts, farmers hoped to lower maintenance costs and improve their ability to innovate. This movement gained traction at both state and federal levels, with several lawmakers introducing bills to support farmers' rights. Sustainability also became a major focus. Farmers explored regenerative agriculture techniques, which prioritized soil health, water conservation, and reduced chemical inputs. These practices not only improved long-term productivity, but also opened up new revenue streams in the growing market for organic and sustainably sourced products. Community cooperatives played a vital role in fostering resilience. By pooling resources and sharing knowledge, farmers were able to access new technologies, diversify their crops, and develop strategies for surviving market fluctuations. Cooperative networks also help farmers connect directly with consumers through initiatives such as community-supported agriculture programs, which provided a stable source of income. These grassroots efforts demonstrated the power of collaboration and innovation in overcoming adversity. Despite the challenges they faced, American farmers showed that they could adapt and thrive by embracing new approaches to farming and advocacy. As farmers continued to push for change, the focus shifted to exploring long-term solutions that could redefine the future of American agriculture. Policy reforms on the horizon. As the agricultural crisis deepened, both federal and state governments recognized the urgent need for policy reforms to stabilize the farming industry. Under mounting pressure from farmers, policymakers began crafting legislation aimed at addressing the systemic vulnerabilities exposed by trade disputes and global competition. One of the most significant areas of reform focused on expanding domestic and international trade opportunities. The United States sought to renegotiate trade agreements with emerging markets, particularly in Africa and Southeast Asia, to reduce its reliance on traditional partners like China. By diversifying export markets, American farmers hoped to mitigate the risks associated with geopolitical tensions. Additionally, legislators proposed measures to support small and mid-sized farms, which had been disproportionately affected by the crisis. These measures included increased funding for rural infrastructure, such as improved transportation networks and broadband access, which would enhance farmers' ability to compete in a global market. Loan programs were also expanded to help farmers invest in modern equipment and sustainable practices. Environmental policy reforms were another key focus. As climate change continued to impact crop yields, policymakers introduced incentives for farmers to adopt climate-resilient practices, such as regenerative agriculture and water conservation techniques. These policies aim to create a more sustainable agricultural system capable of withstanding extreme weather events and long-term environmental shifts. While policy reforms provided a foundation for recovery, ensuring resilience at home requires a renewed focus on community support and generational change. Building resilience and preparing the next generation. The future of American farming will depend not only on technology and policy, but also on the resilience of rural communities and the next generation of farmers. In recent years, farming communities have rallied around initiatives designed to strengthen local economies and attract new talent to the industry. One of the key challenges is addressing the aging farmer population. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the average age of farmers is over 57, and many are nearing retirement. To counter this trend, programs aimed at mentoring and supporting young young farmers have gained momentum. Agricultural colleges and vocational schools are partnering with community organizations to provide training in both traditional and modern farming techniques. Financial support for beginning farmers has also expanded. Loan programs and grants are helping young entrepreneurs purchase land, invest in equipment, and launch sustainable farming operations. These efforts aim to reduce the barriers to entry that have historically discouraged new generations from pursuing careers in agriculture. Additionally, mental health services and social support networks have become a priority in rural areas. Farming is a physically and emotionally demanding profession, and the pressures of market instability, climate change, and financial uncertainty have taken a toll on many farmers. Community-led initiatives are working to reduce stigma around mental health and provide resources to those in need. As these efforts continue to evolve, American farming is entering a new era defined by resilience, collaboration, and innovation. American farmers are proving their strength and adaptability in the face of unprecedented challenges. With bold policy reforms, technological innovation, and strong community support, the future of farming is being reshaped before our eyes. But what do you think? Will these changes lead to a farming renaissance in the United States? Or are there still too many obstacles for the industry to overcome? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective is valuable, and we want to hear from you.